Hey, thanks for stopping by the Watercolor Methods YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll find out when we've got something new posted for you to watch. And maybe check out our website, watercolormethods.com, where we've got over 200 full-length, in-depth watercolor lessons and tutorials that you might like. In the meantime, let's take a look at this lesson. In this lesson, we're just going to go over a quick, easy way to get really nice looking reflections in your water. Very simple and very quick lesson. You'll be able to use this technique over and over and over again in your paintings that include water, mostly slow moving water, where there's fairly nice but indistinct reflections in the water from the objects around it. We're really just going to concentrate on getting the bank of this stream, both here and here, a little bit of the water in, and then those really easy reflections with this quick, easy technique. I'm going to be using just some simple basic colors for this. Cobalt blue, we'll be using that for the water, and then a mixture of ultramarine blue, actually, and cerulean yellow to get a nice dark green for the weeds on the bank of the stream, as well as the reflections in the water. And that's all you need in terms of color. A couple brushes, a medium-sized round and a smaller size round is all I'll need, and that's what I'm going to use for this quick lesson. So we'll go back over here, take a quick look before we jump in. One thing to remember about painting water, really of any kind, is that between the far bank and the edge of the water where they meet, it's always a good idea to leave a bit of white paper showing right there. This is an effect that you see pretty often, actually, when you're looking at a far bank, you know, the far side of a stream, the far side of a lake. Any place like that, there's often a bit of pretty reflective water. It seems to be white or almost white, and if you leave that in a painting, it works really well. Number one, to separate those two different objects, but number two, to highlight the edge of the bank, which is so important as well. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to paint in the water. We're going to keep it nice and fluid. We're going to have a graded wash that starts very light back here near that far bank and gets a bit darker as it works its way into the foreground. That's a typical way to do water. Then we're going to get in the darker green color for those green weeds for that summery time season, the green weeds that are sticking up off the bank. We're going to get those in. We're going to work really wet and fluid in both areas, and the reason we're going to do that is because there's two different ways to do this, and I'm going to show you both. But you have to be working wet and wet for it to work, so you've got to really be doing that in your painting. Now we're just going to focus on, again, the water and these two banks on the stream, getting the weeds in and then getting the reflections. Just a real quick, simple exercise. We're going to start with that cobalt blue, and again, pretty light back here. I'm going to paint carefully to leave that white edge that I was just talking about, that little bit of reflective water back in there. So I'm painting carefully there, but I'm working really fluid, and that allows me to go back in actually and layer in some more water to lighten this up. I want this area to be pretty light back in here, this water. And as I come forward, I'm going to paint carefully around the edge of the bank there. As I come forward, I'll add more of the blue. I'll get that a little bit darker. I'll actually get some quick light strokes here to get a little rough brush here in this foreground. And that kind of looks like it might be some bright highlights, reflective highlights in the water. If I want to darken it up and I'm working nice and fluid, I can just drop some more darker color right in there, and it works really, really well. Well, let's go in and get the banks of the stream in. And again, that's ultramarine blue and some cerulean yellow, a cool yellow in there together to get this nice dark green. And again, I want to leave that white edge right along the bank. You can see I'm dragging the side of the brush. I've got that nice dark, it's really a blue-green back there. I may green it up a little bit, but notice that I'm putting it in with the side of the brush. Notice also that it's very wet and very fluid, right? Can you use the side of the brush, gets a little bit more of that brush, rough brush looking work back in here. Shows some of the weeds sticking up out of, individual weeds that is, sticking up out of that mass of green weeds back in there. I've picked up a little yellow just to green it up a little bit. Now there's two ways to do this, and I already mentioned that, but I've got a nice wet passage here and a nice wet passage here, and you can see that they touched, and some of my wet water, the blue, cobalt blue water, actually bled up into that area. Created a little sort of a mark like maybe there's some weeds, lighter weeds sticking up out of there. But what I'm doing now is essentially taking this smaller brush, lighter brush, and pulling some of that wet color down from back here. In fact, I think I need some more. I'd like it to be a little darker. And I'm pulling it down so it touches that wet water. And I'm going to let it just blend down into the water, giving me a very soft, kind of short, shallow reflection. And then I'm going to put a couple other marks down in here, drop them in, get those really nice, easy, sort of dispersed reflections, but get those in pretty quick and easy. Let's leave that alone and go over here to this other bank on the right. I'm going to do the same thing, ultramarine blue and cerulean yellow mixed together to get that nice dark green. I've got blue showing at the bottom, so I'll pick up a little bit more of the yellow and try to green that up. Again, pulling those individual weeds out with the side of the brush, getting those individual marks. I'm actually back in the background there a little bit. Now here I tried not to have those colors touch each other because this is really the second way to do it. Rather than allowing these two wet passages to touch each other, I can now just go get some of the same color I used here, and let's just drop it in to this, again, very wet, still wet passage that I used for my water. Again, works really easy. It's really quick, really easy. The marks are a little bit indistinct, where certainly these aren't mirror reflections, but it's enough to really give a nice sense of reflection and reflectivity in the water in both cases. So that's it. Really quick, simple, easy technique. The key to this, again, is working really wet. Nice wet fluid washes for both the water and for the banks, those weedy banks on the edge of the stream here. Both of those have to be nice and fluid so that you can get, in this case, the mixing and mingling between the two areas. And in this case, we can go back in with the color that we used on the bank and drop it into that wet passage that is our foreground water. So again, quick, easy technique. You can use this over and over again in any one of your paintings, and it's going to give you a very nice, easy way to show those reflections in water.